Hey everybody, it's Pastor Paul. I think it's Thursday morning where you are back in the States. We are right here in Northern Ireland. And as my good friend and videographer Lawton Segler is going to show you, we are sitting here on a massive landscape of water, of cliffs, of this giant causeway. And in fact, that's what they call this place, Giant's Causeway. Now, I'm not going to give you the local legend that's behind all of this, and Lawton, he's going to pan that way too, just so you can kind of get the full panoramic view here. But we're on the northernmost coast of Ireland in this one of the top 10 places to visit in Ireland, called the Giant's Causeway. And you may say, what in the world, Pastor Paul, does this have to do with C.S. Lewis? Well, I'm glad you asked. And even if you didn't ask, I'm going to answer the question for you anyway. So when Lewis was a small boy, he and his mom and his older brother Warnie would travel from Belfast up to the northern coast of Ireland, which is where we are. And they would spend a few weeks every summer making these journeys together as a family. Now, I say it was these three, Lewis and his mom and his brother, but never his dad. And if you know the story of Lewis, you know that he had a really awkward, strained relationship with the father, primarily because the father was strange and awkward. For whatever reason, the father never went on these trips. He always stayed back. He was a man of routine, did not like a disruption. But they would come here, and we believe that this is part of what lit the imaginative fire of C.S. Lewis. And we've been journeying all around northern Scotland, looking at places like the Giant Causeway, the Mourne Mountains, the County Down. And I want you to hear how Lewis talks about these experiences and how formative they were in his writing. So here's Lewis. He says, I have seen landscapes, notably in the Mourne Mountains and southwards, which under a particular light made me feel that at any moment a giant might raise his head over the next ridge. I mean, can you envision that here, right? A giant raising his head over the next ridge. We think about Jill and Estes and old Puddleglum making their journey in the silver chair. And God, Aslan had set all of these road maps and road marks along the way for them to follow. But of course, they missed them. Here's another quote from Lewis. He says, I yearn to see County Down in the snow. One almost expects to see a march of dwarves dashing past. How I long to break into a world where such things were true. So you hear him there thinking about this sort of landscape giving rise to giants and dwarves. He also tells us that part of Restovar which overlooks Carlington Lough is my idea of Narnia. So Lewis doesn't really leave us any doubt here. These were all in his private letters and such, that we know it was landscapes like this and this very one that inspired much of his writing as he is envisioning this giant world of Narnia. Now you may say that's all well and fine, Pastor Paul. What does that have to do with my life? And again, even if you didn't ask it, I'm going to answer it. It's very simple. That Lewis grew up without an iPhone. Lewis grew up without a television. He barely had a radio. But what he did have was lots of books. He had his legs and his head and his imagination, and he spent loads and loads of time outside. And one of the things that I want to encourage us to do is I'm not going to sit here and shake my finger at you and say, naughty people at Four Oaks, get off your iPhones, although I could say that, and you could say it back to me. But maybe part of what stunts our growth, or even our spiritual growth, imagination, is in our just neglecting the beauty around us, is the fact that we never look up. And that's a good call for us as Christians, to look up, to be sober, to be aware. And sometimes that means literally looking up from the phone that you're looking at right now, watching me do this devotional. But it also just means metaphorically, do those things which remind you of who God is and his nature and his creation and who you are, a small person who in the grand scheme of things is not much, but whom God loves dearly anyway. And so you don't have to go to Northern Ireland to do this, right? But I mean, this could be at Maclay Gardens. This could be a walk in your neighborhood. This could be simply going to a park and sitting on a bench and looking at the trees, driving down one of our beautiful canopy roads. And the idea is not here like you and nature become one and all find yourself on a dusty road. That's not the idea at all. The idea is fire your imagination, your thoughts, your thinking by having times alone, having times in solitude, having times in silence and reflection and looking around and gazing at the created order. And this, I think, accounts for the kindling, so to speak, that God used in C.S. Lewis's life to light a great fire, a great literary spark of genius that still blesses us today. So just an encouragement wherever you are, whatever you're doing. If it's the glance out the window, if it's sitting out on the back porch, as Americans, that kind of stuff can feel inefficient, but it's something we are dramatically missing from our culture. Solitude, meditation, silence, beauty, reading, reflection. No wonder might be the most anxious generation in the history of the world when, relatively speaking, we have the least amount to be anxious about. Not to minimize our problems, but thinking about the greatest generation and the great world war and life and death. I mean, those were weighty things. But again, it's not to minimize our culture or time that we live in. It's simply to say, let's make the most of it, leverage it, and get our eyes fixed on somewhere besides ourselves, besides our screen, and upon God and the world that He's made. And that's the word here from Giants Causeway in Northern Ireland. We've got one more of these coming up that you're going to watch tomorrow. Where will we be then? What will be the significance for us? Wait and find out.